How's it going, Guardians? Shifty here, and Season 17 is just around the corner. I have a few more video uploads planned for my channel for the rest of Season of the Risen. In today's video, we're going to talk about a weapon type that I think is going to be a massive standout in Season 17. Over the past several TWABs, Bungie has released some of the patch note previews. Some of the changes that caught my eye include the changes to machine guns. Now, if you aren't aware or haven't been paying attention to these patch note previews, machine guns are getting a pretty hefty buff. Before we talk about that specific buff, I do want to mention that Xenophage is going back to the way it used to be. Xenophage used to be a pretty solid weapon to use overall, but then Bungie decided to nerf its fire rate. Unfortunately, after the nerf, it just didn't feel the same and it wasn't as powerful as it once was. So Bungie is now going to increase that rate of fire again from 100 RPM to 120 RPM, and they're going to reduce the damage per bullet to match what it used to be. So they're basically unnerfing the Xenophage. Overall, in Season 17, machine guns are getting a buff as well. As indicated in the TWAB way back from April 21st, all machine guns are getting a 40% damage boost against PvE enemies. However, they will only be getting a 20% damage boost against bosses. The 40% damage buff is going to apply to every machine gun. The 20% against bosses will apply to every machine gun except for Xenophage and Grand Overture. Obviously, Xenophage and Grand Overture are only two exotic heavy machine guns. Outside of those two, you have Thunderlord and Heir Apparent for exotic machine guns. Those two will receive that 20% damage boost against boss enemies. It's also important to keep in mind that champions are not considered bosses. That means champions are also going to be taking 40% more damage from these machine guns. Now that I've gone over the changes for machine guns, I want to talk about something that appeared in a later TWAB. There was kind of a Q&A segment in one of the later TWABs, and one of the questions was, trace rifles and machine guns are both getting buffed. Does this suggest future anti-champion mods? Bungie's answer to that was no comment. Now, a lot of people are speculating that we're going to be getting anti-champion mods for trace rifles and machine guns in Season 17. I tend to agree with the sentiment, however, it's not guaranteed to appear in Season 17, but I do think that they will appear very soon, either in Season 17 or Season 18. But in today's video, I want to talk about some easily accessible machine guns that you should get your hands on in order to be prepared for any possible anti-champion mods for machine guns. Even if there aren't any anti-champion mods, the buffs that are coming to this weapon type are going to be enough to make them fun to use in PvE activities. So to start things off, I'm going to talk about two extremely easy to access legendary machine guns. The first one I want to talk about is one that you can go out and pick up right this second. It's currently being sold by Xur this weekend, so if you're watching this video on the weekend of release, you can go and pick up this machine gun to be prepared for Season 17. The machine gun Xur is selling is the 7th Seraph Saw. Not only is this a pretty solid machine gun, but it can generate Warmind cells, and the particular roll that Xur is selling is really great actually. You have a couple solid barrel options here. You have high caliber rounds. You also have light mag if you want to increase reload speed and slightly increase the range. You also have auto-loading holster and Vorpal weapon. This is one of the best rolls that you can get on the 7th Seraph Saw, especially for PvE. Auto-loading holster makes it so you never have to stow the weapon, you just have to stow it for a short time. Overall, for a legendary machine gun, this is going to be a great add clear weapon. Vorpal weapon is also going to help if the machine guns do get an anti-champion mod next season. Like I said, this machine gun is extremely accessible. You can go purchase it at Xur right now if you're watching this video on the weekend prior to Season 17. The next machine gun that I want to talk about that I think is accessible and easy to acquire for most people for next season is the Recurrent Impact. This is the machine gun that was added for Season of the Risen. Since it was introduced this season and weapon crafting was also introduced, this machine gun is craftable. That's a pretty big deal because if you can craft it, you can select the perks that you want on it. Now, this one is a rapid fire frame, so it might not be all that popular with a ton of people. However, with a rapid fire frame, you do get deeper ammo reserves and a faster reload when the magazine is empty. Now, if you go ahead and craft a roll that complements that rapid fire frame, you're going to be able to have an add clear monster. So the roll that I crafted to be prepared for Season 17 is as follows. I have arrowhead break, I have tactical mag, I have field prep for even more ammo in my reserves, and headstone is going to make this even better for add clear. Not only that, but this weapon has one of the better origin traits. It has land take, which increases your resilience and gives you damage resistance when you defeat combatants. This can stack up to 3 times, giving you 5% damage resistance for each stack, up to a total of 15%. Now, of course, I do want to touch on all 4 exotic machine guns that I mentioned earlier. If the machine guns happen to get an anti-barrier mod, I think Thunderlord is going to be a really amazing weapon for barrier champions. First of all, you're going to have armor-piercing rounds, which will help against that barrier. Then you have lightning rounds, so this weapon fires faster and more accurately the longer the trigger is held. Continuous damage generates lightning strikes. And the intrinsic trait is Rain Havoc. Kills with this weapon generate lightning strikes from above. When you generate lightning strikes via continuous damage, you're probably going to be able to completely melt a barrier champion shield if this does have anti-barrier mods. I think this will be a top tier choice if that is the case. But not only that, if they don't have any anti-champion mods, Thunderlord is going to be an ad clear monster because with that 40% damage buff and those lightning strikes, you're going to be clearing out groups of ads with no problem. Next up is Xenophage, and of course we talked about all the changes that are being made to this weapon. It's getting reverted to its previous form. In the past, before the nerf, I was using Xenophage in endgame activities that made a really solid weapon for taking out champions. This is also going to turn into a monster if we happen to get an anti-champion machine gun mod. Thunderlord would be great for barrier champions. I think Xenophage would be great against any type of champion. The third one I want to talk about is Heir Apparent, and of course Guardian Games is currently going on right now. There's a few days left. It's going to end at the beginning of season 17, so you still have a chance to get your hands on the Heir Apparent right now if you don't already have it. You can go out and do the quest, and you can try and complete the catalyst before Tuesday's reset. Again, I'm kind of getting repetitive here, but I think this one is going to be a really excellent machine gun again as well next season. First of all, one of the perks that you have is Armor of the Colossus. It says while at full health, spinning up this weapon protects you with an arc shield. Then you have the intrinsic trait where you hold your aiming button and it spins up this weapon, and this weapon can be fired only when fully spun up. It's basically a Gatling gun. And if you do have the catalyst, that increases the arc shield's durability and partially reloads the magazine if it is destroyed. So with the Heir Apparent, you get an overshield when you're at full health, you have a high magazine, and that's going to do a lot of damage. If enemies happen to break your shield, you'll also be able to partially refill that magazine and fire for even longer. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned is the Titan exotic Actium War Rig. With all of these exotics, that is going to be a top tier exotic armor choice on Titans next season. For a weapon like Heir Apparent, you would really be able to fire this for a very long time. I think one thing that's going to make Heir Apparent stand out next season is that overshield. Depending on how durable it is in something like a Grandmaster Nightfall, I could see this being a really solid choice. And don't forget that Catalyst increases the durability of the arc shield, so I do recommend getting that before the end of Guardian Games. And lastly, I want to talk about the machine gun that got added in this season, the Grand Overture. Now for the Grand Overture, I'm going to have to wait and see how it performs in endgame activities. I'm not personally a fan of its standard firing mode, but I do really like the rockets it fires. So if you don't know, this has a trait called Omega Strike. If you land hits with the slug launcher to load missiles, you can hold R and then fire to launch several missiles in a volley. So basically all you have to do is hit enemies with a regular attack that's going to load missiles into the weapon, and then all you have to do is hold your reload button and you'll be able to fire volleys of those missiles. But you also have the intrinsic trait here, Wrath of the Colossus. It's a heavy slug launcher that charges, then fires full auto while the trigger is held. So that's the standard attack. It does have projectiles and they do have travel time, and so you kind of have to lead the shots and they don't always hit your target. I'm just not a huge fan of that particular fire mode, but I really like the rocket volleys. Also, if you have the catalyst for this, you get a minor stat boost. This says 20 handling, but over on the stat bar it says you get stability. I'm not sure what's going on there or which one you actually get, but you also get the perk that makes it so missile explosions will blind combatants. Those defeated by missile impacts then explode. So this one, I'm kind of in the wait and see category. I want to see how it plays out, if there are any anti-champion mods, but I'll also want to see how it works with the machine gun buff. Again, if you forgot, this is only going to get that 40% damage buff against PvE combatants, excluding bosses, and it will not get the 20% damage boost against bosses. Well, that is it for today's video. I really hope that machine guns are in a good place next season. I can't wait to use them in PvE. If they do get an anti-champion mod, I'm really looking forward to doing some solo GM runs with a machine gun in my heavy weapon slot. Let me know down in the comments what machine guns you're looking forward to using next season. If we do get an anti-champion mod, which exotic heavy machine gun do you think will stand out most? Anyway, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to like and subscribe. I just want to thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.